Okie dokie, I believe we are all the way live. Hello and welcome to my graveyard. I'm your host of the evening, the Cemetery Man from Salem, Mass. Always taking names and kicking candy ass. I'm Lily Color here with you on Grande's Graveyard. And tonight we dive head first into a very first time ever. And I know it's weird. It's a Tuesday. I'm live on a Tuesday. What the heck, Grande? I know it's kind of odd, but I got to be honest, man. Spooky season's upon us, and I've been watching a ton of horror movies. I've been doing a ton of show prep for Thursday's show, where Don Nice will be back on Grande's Graveyard, and we'll be discussing all things Candyman. Candyman, the original, of course, is celebrating its 30th anniversary this October the 16th, this Sunday. And that's why I really wanted to celebrate that movie and its anniversary. And as long as, we're on that, we're going to discuss the sequels as well. But in that vein, I've been watching a ton of stuff this holiday season, whether it be stuff like the Addams Family. I've been watching the '90s versions, the '60s television show. I've been watching a ton of stuff. Amityville Horror, Amityville Horror 2. And just recently, I stumbled upon I felt like old school weird 70s horror one night, and I went on to Willard from 1971, which is an awesome little flick, of course. And then that made me want to watch the sequel, which is, of course, Ben from 1972. And then that kind of gave me the urge to go ahead and watch Willard, the remake from 2003. Now, Willard, the remake from 2003, I had only seen once before, and I kind of was mixed on it. And this time around, though, I ended up really quite liking the movie. And I kind of found myself sitting there after the credits rolled on Willard 2003. And I was kind of conflicted which was better, the original or the remake. Now, I mean, 99 out of 100 times you ask me that question, I'm almost always going to tell you the original movie is better. And most cases I do believe that to be the case. Like I've heard there's a lot of remakes that people will put over the originals, like the original Hills Have Eyes. A lot of people seem to shit on it now and put the remake over. Same with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Those two I don't see at all. I think the original versions are better. I actually think I would go a step forward to say that if you don't like the originals better, with those two particular films, I'm not sure if you like old school grindhouse 70s horror films like those two. So maybe that's why you like the remakes better. Now, every now and again I'll hear somebody say, "Oh, this remake was better. This remake was better." But that's kind of why I wanted to do this show tonight, because this is arguably the first time in my life where I'm looking at a remake and I think there is a possibility that it could rival, if not be better than the original film. And I quite like both of these movies. And I sat down and I thought about it for quite a while. And I said, hey, maybe I can get a show out of this. Maybe, just maybe, I sit down and I'll talk it out and we'll go category by category. Similar vein to when we did the Universal Soldier versus Demolition Man show, that I went category by category, actor by actor, director versus director. And every single category, I gave a point to one film or the other. And at the end, I decided which film I liked better out of 10 categories. This one doesn't have 10 categories. We have 7, but the 7th category has 2 parts. So it's really 8. So we could end in a tie. We could end in a 4-4, and we have to do a pick 'em. That could very well happen. If you have seen both of these films, if you have strong feelings one way or the other, you can let me know in the chat below. I know this is not a night I usually go live, so I see right now there is nobody in the chat. So this may have just been a curveball that nobody saw coming, and unfortunately, it's going to cost me a lot of viewership. But hopefully, if you catch the replay, maybe if you want to let me know down below, or if you join us in the middle of this, let me know. I got the chat up on my phone, so I'll definitely be willing to answer anything you guys have to say, or if you want to contribute to the show, no worries at all. But I say we get underway. I've got 7 categories here and a clear-cut winner that we will just have to crown at the end. So Willard versus Willard, 1971 versus 2003, original versus remake. Let's get underway. Let's get a throwaway category out of the way first. This is one sheet versus one sheet. Yes. I know, weird category to kind of throw in an original versus remake, but I have always been a big diehard posters guy. Like, I am a very big believer in, if you have a good theatrical one sheet poster, I believe it really helps sell your film. At least for me, it does. If I see a good one sheet poster, usually I'm like, damn, I want to go see that movie. Like prime example, and this movie ended up being shit, but I give, credit to the people that did the poster, that new Wonder Woman 84 movie. Well, I guess it's not even that new anymore, but I saw the poster, how colorful and bright it was. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, dead center. I was like, damn, this is a cool poster. It makes me want to go see this movie. I went to go see it, hated the movie, but it sold the ticket, and that's why I'm a big fan of one sheet posters. I collect, of course, a lot of one sheet posters. I have some really fun video posters, whether it be the Sleepaway Camp 3 one that I always record the shows next to, and of course April Fool's Day signed by Amy Steele. I'm a big one sheet posters guy. So I figured that'd be a fun way to kind of start off. It's not necessarily marketing the category, otherwise it'd be marketing versus marketing. But instead, I decided let's do something a little bit outside the box. Let's do one sheet versus one sheet. So we take a look here on the left. Of course, we have the original poster, one sheet for Willard. Of course, I actually quite like this. I think it's a cool little poster. It's black and white with the people, and then they decided to do rainbow text right here at the bottom. I thought that was kind of neat, and of course, I really like the tagline. Of course, this is Willard and his friend Ben. Ben will do anything for Willard. This is one movie you should not see alone, rated GP. Of course, this is, I guess, around the time that GP was around, and then, it became PG as time went on, which is weird because this is the furthest thing from a PG movie. But it is what it is. I like this. I think the tagline is very 1970s. Of course, I like all the stuff at the bottom here, Willard in all capitals, given the cast and stuff. Simple, but I think it's effective. I like that he's kind of triumphantly standing, Bruce Davison. You've got Willard front and center, you've got the rat front and center. I think this is a good theatrical one-sheet poster. On the other hand, though, we have a similar one sheet poster where, once again, our actor is playing Willard as front and center. And instead of Ben, we have Socrates on this one, which is Socrates is Willard's best friend, Willard's only friend. And of course, we have the tagline here from small things come great power, which I like that. Granted, it does sound a little Spider Man ish. It's a little Spider-Man ish. It sounds like a fucking like, oh, this summer from small things come great power, like Spider-Man 4. I don't know. It just sounds a little bit superhero preachy, but nothing bad. I like that instead of on the Willard poster, you don't have Bruce Davison's name on the top. This one you do. Crispin Glover's name is on the top. And I, for one, kind of like that because, we are coming to see Crispin Glover. Right, like we are coming to see Willard. I know it's a film about this outcast who befriends this group of rats, and then one by one the rats are kind of helping him get vengeance on his evil stickler boss, and they turn his life upside down. Some good reasons, some good ways, some bad ways. And Crispin Glover's name being on the top, I think I actually quite appreciate that. I think that's really the reason to buy a ticket to that movie if you're going to go see it. So, really close here. I mean, you have two theatrical one sheet posters, and I think they're both quite good. However, in this particular category, I think we're going to go with the Willard one sheet of the original. I like the original one sheet just slightly better. Maybe because I'm old school, I'm not sure, but I think the Crispin Glover one, while I like it, I definitely think that this original one edges it out just a little bit. I like the hand drawing, rat instead of I'm not sure if it's a CG rat or if that's actually a real rat on the poster with Crispin Glover. I'm not sure. His face almost looks a little CG here. I don't know if that's actually a picture of him or a digitally enhanced picture. But either way, I think they're both quite good, but I'm going to edge the original here. So the original one sheet is going to get the edge in the first category. So for right now, Willard 1971 leads 1-0, but we have plenty more categories to get to. And next up, it's going to be lead versus lead. Yes, Bruce Davison versus Crispin Glover. Lead versus lead. Who is the better actor of the two? And in this part, of course, of the social outcast, Willard. And I actually think this one was quite close too. Now, Bruce Davison, he was an up-and-comer at the time when he got the role for this. Of course, he got a call from his agent, and he said, hey, head on down to the studio. There's this guy, Danny Mann. He wants to, see if you're going to be good for this part. They're making a movie about rats. He went down, they put the rat Ben on his shoulder, and Bruce Davison said, hey, I think I could be really good for this. What do you think? And the rat apparently started to lick his hair. And that's when the producer and the director looked at each other and said, I think we have our Willard. Bruce Davison now has gone on to become like a big veteran actor, just a great character actor and a ton of different stuff. And I quite like him. I think he's a really good veteran actor. And I think in a lot of ways, he brings a very much more dialed down performance as opposed to what Crispin Glover, when we get into him, what he brings. Now, Davison is very rarely over the top in this role. He's very believable as the social nerdy outcast. I think he does a really good job. And I think, in key scenes when you go to remake them, it's really where you could get your make or break for these performances. And I think both of them work for different reasons. Now, Davison is much more dialed back to 5, whereas Glover is dialed up to about 20. And I would say that Glover looks the part more than Bruce Davison. I would say Bruce Davison's a normal enough looking guy. Crispin Glover looks like a guy that would be friends with a fucking pet rat. Like, let's be honest. I mean, he looks like a fucking weirdo. Like, let's just look down here, man. And oops, I just did the. Sorry about that. Let's get back up to the top. We have, of course, Crispin Glover here, and I think Crispin Glover does a wonderful job, just looking the part. I think he really just looks like an absolute fucking maniac that would become friends with a pet rat and name it Socrates and name one Ben. And, I think that Crispin Glover looks the part more when it comes to these two actors. However, I think Bruce Davison does a very good job at making you feel, more sorrow, more pain. It just, you really do feel awful for this character because he's trying to do good. He's trying to be on time to work. And, his boss, played by Ernest Borgnine, is giving him all this shit. And, he's trying to be a trooper, trying to take one for the team. You get the fact that he's very respectful, Bruce Davison, but I like when the time comes and the shit starts to hit the fan, that when he has to stand up to Ernest Borgnine, he doesn't really start shouting. He really sits him down and talks to him mano a mano. You killed Socrates. That was my only friend. And it's really, he's able to derive a good intensity, even though he's not really raising his voice all that much. And to me, that goes a long way. And then getting into Crispin Glover's performance, I would say that Crispin Glover is definitely the more dialed up and animated of the two. But I definitely think, for what it's worth, that Crispin Glover brings just an amazing energy to this role. And that's why I really like Crispin Glover. Sean Blue Digital's in the house. Sean, what's going on, good brother? Hope all is well with you, man. I'm doing a original versus remake here tonight. And it's the very first time ever on Grande's Graveyard. It was very impromptu. What happened was, man, I watched both these movies and I sat down and I'm like, man, I usually have always liked the remake. I'm sorry, I always like the original more than remake. But this is a remake that I actually find quite good. And I figured, let's sit down tonight. Let's go category by category and talk about this. So welcome, Brother Sean. Hope all is well with you. We're going to go right through this. And if you have any thoughts on this original versus remake, please feel free to share them. But definitely would like to read them out. But I definitely think Crispin Glover was born to play this role. Like Crispin Glover had been in so many awesome little parts in movies. Of course, everybody remembers from Back to the Future. Of course, Friday the 13th. Of course, movies like, Charlie's Angels, where he played the weird hair antagonist. He fit perfectly in this, and I've read that they initially wanted, guys like Macaulay Culkin to do the role. And while I like Macaulay Culkin a lot, I don't know if he would have been as good as Crispin Glover or as naturally creepy. I think that's really the difference here between the two roles. Bruce Davison is definitely a character I feel more sorrow for. I definitely feel worse for, on a personal level. But I think Crispin Glover, you feel that raw, tenacity a lot more, and I think he looks more of the part. So it's a tough one here, but I definitely think the reason to watch either one of these movies, like if I had to say, oh, give me like the number one reason if I was to go out and watch either one of these right now, what would be the number one reason? My reason would be Crispin Glover in the remake. I think Crispin Glover's wonderful actor. I think he was born to play this part, and I think that even though, Davison probably does the humanity elements more well and the dramatic parts. Like, for example, there's a scene where Crispin Glover, they tell him he has to sell his house. and he starts breaking down. Why do I have to pay for my parents dead? His voice is cracking, he's crying. It's a very raw scene, and it's very real. I mean, you really feel in that moment for Crispin Glover, whereas Bruce Davison gives he's sad, but he doesn't really dial it up to the point where I think he has to. Crispin Glover really goes for this role, and he really is believable as someone who would become friends with a fucking pet rat. So for me, it's Crispin Glover, a slam dunk. I do think it's close, but I do think Crispin Glover gets the edge. Now, Sean Blue Digital says, yeah, everything is good. I truly am sorry to see how the baseball ended for you. Oh, it happens, man. I know we're fans of teams in the same division, but I've been there. I understand how it feels. Hey, man, I hope you guys roll over Atlanta. I'm stoked you beat them today. But besides that, Willard Remake is an interesting watch. Yeah, no, I think they're both quite good. I actually really like both original and remake, and that's why I kind of wanted to sit here tonight and talk this out because I feel it is rather close. I definitely don't think this is a slam dunk either way. And funny enough, Sean, I was curious. I said, what do people think? Like, am I in the minority and majority? Like, do I think this is close? Am I the only person that think this is close? IMDb, the original gets a 6.2, and on IMDb also, the Willard remake gets a 6.1. So they are point 0.1 apart according to IMDb. I thought that was very funny. I was like, wow, like that is how close this is. It's 0.1%. That's how close it is to some people. So I thought that was funny. I really need to get a copy of the original Willard movie. I believe Shout Factory put copies of both of these out. I own them both. And I rewatched them both recently, and I think they're both very excellent films. I'm not sure if anyone's ever put the sequel out on Blu-ray. Ben, of course, the sequel from 1972, which actually stars the kid from Burnt Offerings, and he goes with the rat from the first movie, Ben. And he kind of befriends him, and I actually really like that sequel too. It's nothing great, but it's definitely always a movie I kind of like. This one I'd like to pick up on physical media. I agree with the IMDb ratings too. I definitely do. I think in a lot of ways, they really are that close. And that's why I wanted to sit down tonight because usually I'm always original first. But this is one case where I think the remake has a damn good chance. So right now, we did one sheet versus one sheet, and the original one sheet I put over. I think that's the better one sheet of the two. It's close, but I like the original one sheet. And then same here. Bruce Davison does a good job, but I think Crispin Glover was actually born to play this fucking role. So I'm going to go Crispin Glover with lead versus lead. But now we will get into our next category, our third category of the show. This is boss versus boss. Yes, Ernest Borgnine, of course, in the original, here getting attacked by numerous rats. And then, of course, in the remake, it's R. Lee Ermey, of course, from Full Metal Jacket fame. So this one I think is actually quite close too, because you have two veteran actors. I mean, Ernest Borgnine won an Oscar for a little movie called Marty in the 1950s. It's one of my favorite all-time performances as Ernest Borgnine plays this guy who is kind of, he's sort of this unattractive guy, and he's undesirable, and he's fallen into a depression that he feels that no woman will ever be with him, and he's just really depressed and down on his luck. And basically what he does is he meets this woman one night that is, along, his scale. If he's a 1 to 10 look wise, they're both probably a 6. He falls in love with this other woman who, is feeling in the same shoes that he is. And basically they fall in love. And Marty's a wonderful film, and he won Best Actor at the Academy Awards for that. So Ernest Borgnine, no slouch of an actor. I mean, really good casting choice here as the evil boss, Frank, who just makes Willard's life a living hell in this movie. I think Ernest Borgnine did a really good job. And then on the flip side, you have R. Lee Ermey. And R. Lee Ermey is just one of the craziest, most over-the-top, intense actors. In a lot of movies, he really does play the same part. I mean, he just plays the screaming lunatic that's yelling at you about whatever the hell it may be. He may be funny, may be mean, but he's always there, and he's always giving it his best energy. And that's why I really like R. Lee Ermey. And R. Lee Ermey does a good job as well in the Willard remake, of course, screaming and hollering at Willard, and you owe me a week's pay. You owe me a week's pay, and you're not going to sit here and do overtime because I ain't going to pay you more on my dime. He's really, I mean, just mean in the remake. I think both of these guys do a wonderful job at playing the evil boss, that would make you just want to quit your job or whatever the hell. I think that they both do a really good job, but it's tough to come down to which one do you like more because basically, which one do you like less? That's really what this comes down to because they're both playing clear cut antagonists. Ernest Borgnine, you get the idea that he's fucking around with some woman in the office, and he's also trying to trick Willard into selling his house and talking shit behind his back. Meanwhile, Arlie Ermy, there's one morning where Crispin Glover comes late and he locks the elevator door. And he's like, please just let me in. And he's like, listen, he says, I see you doting over my car out there. He's like, you like that car, Willard? He's like, you know how much money I had to spend, how hard I had to work? He's like, it's something you should try doing. He really finds it fun to belittle Willard in front of everybody. It's almost like both of these characters just get off on burying Willard in front of everyone else for their own sick personal enjoyment. And, I think that's a really good testament to both these actors. I think Ernest Borgnine does a wonderful job. I think Arlie Ermy does a wonderful job. I think it's really, really close. However, I'm gonna have to go with Ernest Borgnine here, and I think it's close. Like I said, a lot of these are gonna be pretty close. But for right now, I think we're gonna go Ernest Borgnine here. I think he does a really good job as this boss character. I just felt he was more scummy. Like he just felt like more of a scumbag to me. Whereas Arlie Ermy was more over the top, yelling at people, stuff like that. I felt that Ernest Borgnine had more pure meanness to him, whereas Arlie Ermy was more entertainingly mean. If that makes any sense to anybody, I don't know. Maybe some people will probably disagree, but I think Arlie Ermy was more colorfully mean, which in turn, if you show a lot of color, I don't know if it's as taken as personally. Whereas Ernest Borgnine was actually a fucking piece of shit. Like he really was a scumbag to him. So I'm gonna go Ernest Borgnine here in this category. Boss versus boss. Ernest Borgnine takes the cake. So the original Willard now leads 2-1. Of course, we can review the original one sheet. We got Willard from 71. Lead versus lead, we went Crispin Glover from the 03. And now we're going to go Ernest Borgnine, Willard 71. We got a couple comments. Sean Blue Digital says, awesome screenshots. Thank you, man. Ciao Grande. Mateo's in the house. Mateo, man. So much for the World Series, brother. Have not seen either movie, but I would sure like to watch the original pretty much against any sequel. Well, cool enough, you can watch the original free on YouTube or Tubi or Amazon Prime. The original is free anywhere. You can literally watch it free on YouTube right now if you wanted to. That's how readily available the original is. The remake, however, I believe it's from Shout Factory. They put a nice Blu-ray special edition out. I own both Blu-rays, but I'm not so sure if the original is the remake is streaming anywhere. I'm not positive. But what happened, Mateo, the reason I'm doing this show is I recently for spooky season, I've been watching a ton of stuff. And I watched the original Willard. Then I watched the sequel, Ben, from 1972. And then I said, let me give that remake a shot. And basically what happened was I found it really close. I found the original and the remake, fairly close. And that's why I wanted to do this little versus show here tonight. So, I appreciate you stopping by, and we're going to go through these things. And I may do spoilers when we get to the last category, when we do ending versus ending. So if you don't want to be spoiled when we get there, I totally understand if you tune out. But this is going to be a lot of fun for sure. I see Corey King Neat Gore is in the house. My guy, Remake Willard, the GOAT. Rats. Yes. Well, we're going to get there. So right now, the original leads 2-1. But I tell you, 99 out of 100 times, I almost always go original. But maybe tonight will be the exception. We'll see. I want to say against remakes, not sequels. No, I knew what you meant. I'm almost always the same way. I almost always feel the original's better. And, while I sat down and I watched both these movies, I liked both. I liked the Willard remake. I liked the Willard original. I have to say it's fairly close. And that's why I felt like doing this. Like I put a volume 1 on this, but I don't know if I will do another one, but I definitely think this is worth talking about because I do think this is fairly close. So let's get into our next category here. And like I said, if you want to tell which one, if you guys have seen the movies, like Corey is putting the remake over, that's cool. I think it's really close. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. But that's why I really want to do this. I think it's fairly close. But next, we're going to be doing female lead versus female lead. Yes, we've got Miss Sandra Locke on the top from the original Willard from 1971. And on the bottom, the voluptuous Laura Harring from, of course, Mulholland Drive fame. Always loved Laura Harring, just a beautiful woman. This one I actually think is one of the easier categories we're going to be talking about here tonight. Sandra Locke, I like in the original film. I think she's sweet, and I definitely buy her chemistry with Bruce Davis, and I think she does a good job. Don't get me wrong, I don't think she's bad, but she doesn't provide the heart that Laura Harring does in the remake. I really like the heart that Laura Harring brought to the remake in this character. Basically, the character, all it really is, this temp that they hire to help Willard in the office because he always comes 40 minutes late. And basically, they hire her to kind of help him straighten out his work and be a temp for him. And in the original film, she's kind of all buddy buddy with him. You get a sense of maybe she's interested. And then in the remake, same thing. She shows up, hey, Willard, you want to get some coffee? Do you want to do this? You want to do that? But I think Laura Harring does a much better job at selling the empathy for the Willard character because in a lot of ways, I've heard a lot of people say that Willard is the true antagonist of both films. I don't see it that way. Now, while Willard was a weird guy and Willard wasn't perfect, I do think he was a good guy trying to do his best on the inside. And I do think he was driven to madness because of how bad his boss hated him. I really believe that. I believe Ernest Borgnine and Arlie Ermy, respectively, I think they both drove him to truly hate himself. And there's this great line in the original film and in the remake where both actors say, I used to hate myself. But now at this moment, I like myself. And I think that's the whole point of the movie. It's whether or not Willard likes himself. He finds salvation in these rats. He finds salvation in these rats, and especially the rat named Socrates, because Socrates is the only friend he ever had. And Laura Herring has to sell the empathy before we get to that part where we do feel bad. Laura Herring's character is basically the audience looking at him like with sad puppy dog eyes. I feel bad for you, Willard. I'm here for you if you ever need me. And it's nice when you need a female to do this role. This is 100% a female role for me. I think Laura Herring slam dunk takes this one. Sandra Locke is fine. She's serviceable. I just don't think she's has the heart or the empathy that Laura Herring brings. So Laura Herring's going to tie things up. The Willard remake gets another point. We are tied at 2-2 with 7 categories in play here. So this is going to come down to it. The next 3 categories will decide. We got some comments though in the meantime. Yeah, old goal from the remake is surprisingly nurturing to where it's believable someone so pretty could get wrapped up with a sweet psycho. But now, at this moment, I like myself. He's Crispin Glover's money. He's really money. I think he's great in that role. And that's why I put him over Bruce Davison. I think his performance is actually much better. I think it's just so much more intense and dialed up. And, you really just, oh my God, he just makes you feel so much angst in the role. But yeah, Laura Herring's going to take this one. So we're tied at 2-2. And we're going to move down to the next category here as we go director versus director. Yes, of course, Tony Mann. And of course, Mr. Glenn Morgan. Yes. Director versus director. Now, this one, I'm sorry, Danny Mann, not Tony Mann. I don't know why I said Tony. My brain was like, you're saying this wrong for sure. I'm sorry. Danny Mann and Glenn Morgan. Now, Danny Mann really wasn't a big horror film director. And that's why a lot of people I've heard over the years say that the original Willard is more like a thriller or a drama film as opposed to a horror film. Now, I would respectfully disagree, but I do think it has a lot of dramatic elements, and I do think that is because of the director. Meanwhile, with Glenn Morgan, I think Glenn Morgan really made more of a horror film. It's definitely has more creepiness to it. It has more grit to it. It definitely the sequences of horror in it, I think, are quite good. Of course, I always remember the scene where Laura Herring she goes to Willard's house and she has her pet cat. And she says, hey, you want to go for coffee? And he says, absolutely. And she says, do you mind if I leave my cat in your house? And Willard's like, are you sure? I don't think that's a good idea. And she says, oh, no, please let us, this way we can go out. So he throws the cat in the house and basically all of the rats sort of swarm and basically try to eat this cat. And it's a very effective horror sequence as the cat is running from furniture to furniture. And they play the classic Michael Jackson song, Ben, from of course, the early 1970s, which was a song produced for the movie Ben, which was the sequel to the original Willard. So he came all the way full circle with it to use that song in this movie, singing about Ben while this cat is running for its life and is trying to be eaten by all of these rats. It's a very effective horror sequence, in my opinion, as this cat is going from jump and furniture to furniture, and it's very intense. And there's a point where you think the cat is going to get out, the cat's going to survive, and the cat leaps from one thing to this grate, and Ben is there, bites it on the nose, and this cat takes a crazy tumble, bam, hits the floor, and gets just demolished by all these rats. That's a very good and well directed sequence of horror, in my opinion. And Glenn Morgan did a wonderful job. Now, it's a crying shame that Glenn Morgan didn't get to do too much more. Unfortunately, this film did not do well. And his only other film, the Black Christmas remake from 2006, which I know has a big cult following, and I know some people would even argue that that's a better remake than the original. I don't think that at all. That one, I think the original Black Christmas is the best movie of any of those. But I do think he did a really good job here with Willard. Whereas, Danny Mann, he brought more of the dramatic element and he keeps the movie very much more grounded, I think, than Glenn Morgan. Glenn Morgan's film is much more horror, dialed up. Whereas, Danny Mann, his film is much more drama dialed down. And there are good sequences directed in here, though. I mean, there's a good sequence where Willard, Bruce Davison, he lets all of his rats go on to Ernest Borgnine's property while there's a big party. And there's a great sequence where all of these rats are in the food and people are smashing the chairs over the, rats. And of course, no rats were harmed in the making of either one of these films, but it really gives the good illusion that these people are killing the rats, that are in their food or in their table or whatever, crawling past their legs. He directs that sequence very well. And it's not easy, but I think it's done very, very effectively. I think both guys do a wonderful job. But I'm going to have to lean towards Glenn Morgan here. I really think I like his approach as a director, tackling this more as a psychological character study of a man who was a true social outcast and a man who found salvation in these rats, particularly Socrates. And the sequences of horror in this film, I think, are slightly better directed than the sequences of dramatic horror in the original film. So, once again, we're going to give the remake a little bit of an edge. The remake goes up 3-2 in the scores. Now, I see we have a lot more people in the chat now. Let's check this out. I think liking Willard. Let's see. I think liking Willard's public torture at the hands of his boss to death of Socrates is fair. It's like no one will be satisfied till Willard is found to have died. Rats. Everybody's sad when the rat dies. Totally. John Steele is in the house. What's up, good brother John Steele? I was just watching Friday the 13th Part 4 with him today. Oh my God, the computer don't lie. Nice. Love Friday the 13th final chapter. Been so long since I've seen either. Bro, Black Christmas is good. It's an okay remake. It's just the original is way better for me. I really got to get the original Willard in my collection. I highly recommend the Blu-ray is very good, and if you're in the mood to watch it and don't own it, you can watch it for free on YouTube, Tubi. I believe it's on Prime Video. The original is a very worth watching film as well. Still haven't seen it. Same been to it. Never seen Willard. The Master of Fear is here waving. Hey, what's up, buddy? The atmosphere and eeriness of the original Black Christmas will always be better, but I do like the '06 remake. I would agree with that wholeheartedly. The '06 remake is very over the top. And it's very just, has a lot of good looking women, a lot of gory kills. It's very much of its era style slasher, whereas Black Christmas, the original, is a very much of its style horror film. It has that grit to it, the POV shots, Bob Clark. I mean, it's a wonderful film. I really love the original Black Christmas. To me, it's superior in every way to the Xmas movie. But that doesn't mean the '06 remake's the biggest piece of shit ever. I'm just saying I would never do an original versus remake episode of that, because I don't even think that's close. I think I would say probably 9 out of 10 categories or people would probably put the original over. Let's see. No, Black Xmas. I see Socrates and Ben here. Oh, haha. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on to our next category here. Category number 6. We're going to scroll down, and this is special effects versus special effects here. So Of course, on the top, we have, of course, the animal trainer from the original film, and I think he did a great job. Of course, the original film, they did not have the luxury of using CGI. And of course, in the remake, they did use a lot of CGI. There's CGI when I was talking about that sequence where the cat gets eaten. There's a lot of CGI rats in that scene where that swarm the cat at the end. This way, they could get the shot they wanted, where the rats really do pounce almost like hyenas. But whereas in the original film, they had to use real rats for everything. And I think there was a lot of merit there because obviously you had to train some of these rats to do things. It definitely couldn't have been the easiest thing in the world. But that's not to say that the remake doesn't use a lot of real rats too. I would say about 90% of it is real rats. The only scene where it's noticeably CGI is where Crispin Glover is on the elevator going to kill his boss. And there's a really epic shot where he's standing on the elevator, it reaches the top, the elevator doors open, and all of these rats, I mean, thousands of rats, run away out of the elevator and pour down. And it just looks like a CGI slide of rats. It really has not aged well. It looks quite poor. Whereas with the original, I don't really have that problem at all. I definitely think there's a lot of the stuff that is aged quite good. Of course, when we get to the ending of the original Willard, I think the rats are used very well there. I think it's heartbreaking when you see, of course, good old Socrates getting killed in the office. I don't know. I think special effects here we're going to have to go with the original film because like, they didn't have CGI at their disposal, and I still think they did a slightly better job with all of these rats that they had to use at their disposal. Whereas the remake, even though everything's dialed up and the CGI is minimal, it doesn't hurt the film in any way. I definitely think the special effects in the first film is slightly better. So we're going to give it to the original film here, and that's going to tie everything up at 3-3. Yes. What's the Canadian film where they dress the small dogs as rats? Old school horror film. Oh man, I don't know. That one that doesn't ring a bell to me. I'm not sure, John Steele. I'm sure you'll think of it though. You're definitely an encyclopedia of knowledge. But now we are moving on to the final category. This is ending versus ending plus horror versus horror. Yes. This is close. Now we're 3-3 so far. We've got 3 votes original, 3 votes remake, and this will probably decide which movie I like better, the original or the remake. Ending versus ending. So these movies are almost carbon copy in every way until you get to the ending. Now, of course, the big climactic scene in both these movies is both versions of Willard, both characters of Willard go to kill their boss, and both give these wonderful monologues. Of course, like I said before, Bruce Davison's is much more grounded, and then Crispin Glover's, he's saying it with just such an intensity and fire in his eyes, and tears crawling down his cheeks. I mean, he's really giving it his all when he's telling off the boss. The boss, of course, in the original, he kind of sits there, takes it, and it just gets devoured by all these rats, and then falls out a window to his death and crashes and burns right here. It's a very well done sequence to me. It's really well shot. And then, of course, in the remake, Arlie Ermy, he hits Willard, actually, runs out, gets to the elevator where all of the rats sort of eat him alive while he's laying down. And Willard kind of hits the button, and you see Arlie Ermy being eaten alive as the elevator lowers down. Both are very effective, and I think they're about even, when it comes to the horror sequence, death scene versus death scene. I think they're very close. However, ending versus ending, they have 2 completely different endings. Now, in the original film, Willard dies. Willard, of course, he is arguing with the rats, mainly Ben, and he's saying that it's time for them to go. And then, of course, all of the rats just start to attack him, and they do these great, prosthetic effects where the rats are jumping at him and almost barreling into Willard's body. And I love Bruce Davison's line delivery here, where he screams and shouts, and his voice cracks, and he says, "I was good to you, Ben. I was good to you." But he really wasn't, and that's, I think, the whole, coming full circle with ending versus ending here is, in one version he dies, in one version he does not. Of course, in the original he dies, but I like that in the original he dies and he really wasn't that good to Ben. He loved Socrates. That's who he loved. He loved Socrates. And that's the thing where I thought was quite smart to do, where Ben knew that, Ben saw that, and Ben envied that, and thus kills Willard in this version. I thought it was very effective. He kills Willard, and the credits just kind of start to roll. A little bit anticlimactic with the credits, but it's an effective scene. However, in the Willard remake, Crispin Glover was set to die. They were going to kill him, but the studio said, no, we're not going to end it like that. He's going to live. And so they changed the ending around from the original film. And basically, what happens is similar standoff. Willard's going all at all of these rats. He even has a monologue yelling at Ben, which I think is quite good. Where he says at first, I love you too, Ben. It's just the two of us. We got our boss back. We got him together. He killed Socrates, and we got him together. It's really intense. But then the real part comes out, and Crispin Glover says, "You know what? I didn't love you. I loved Socrates." And they have a standoff, and Crispin Glover just makes a run for the attic. And of course, Ben is there to greet him at the top of the steps and bites Crispin Glover in the nose. He bleeds everywhere. And you get the idea at first that that would have been the ending. Crispin Glover gets killed by all the rats as he falls into the pit. But they do this crazy, it looks like a tacked on shot where Crispin Glover gets up, stabs the shit out of Ben, kills him, and then the following scene, the last scene of the film, we see Crispin Glover in a mental asylum. This guy is trying to feed him dinner. He says, "Oh, there's a piece of cheese," and we see a rat that resembles Socrates crawl up on his leg. And you can draw your own conclusion. Was that rat real? Was that rat, was he imagining Socrates because that was his best friend? We don't really know. The credits kind of roll and they play the song Ben, but this time it's performed by Crispin Glover, which I thought was quite interesting. Both endings are very good, and they're different. These are different endings. Of course, one is a sad, dramatic ending, and the other one is one that kind of leaves it up to your interpretation. Will he get out of there one day? Will he, find another horde of rats to help him barrel through the doors and continue being the Rat King? Who knows? You kind of draw your own conclusion there. But I think both of these endings are very good and they're very different. And I think they're quite close. It really depends on what you like. Do you like sad endings? You might go the original. Do you like more ambiguous open endings? You might prefer the remake. It's very close. So that's why I added a second category to this, which is horror versus horror. Which one of these two is the more effective horror film? And this is going to be ultimately the category that decides which one I'm taking here, because I think it's very close. Ending versus ending, I honestly think it's a tie. I think they're both perfect endings, but for different reasons because they're different endings. So that's why I went horror versus horror here as a two-part final category here, and this will decide which one I like better. I will say this from a horror standpoint, they're both very effective endings and effective films, I think. And I was talking about earlier, it's more about the horrors of being a social misfit or a social outcast than it is a killer rat film. I think that the real horror here is really more about the horrors of fitting in society and becoming one, and all of the shit that outcasts go through. Their bosses might not like them. They don't have any friends. Their mom wants them to be the social butterflies and have the most beautiful, voluptuous girlfriends in the world, but they don't. They are social misfits. And, it's hard for society to accept them. So a lot of the horror of both of these films, I think, are discussing that. And that in particular, I think, is perfectly tackled in both of these movies as well. I really do. I like in the remake, Willard's mother is, oh, we need to get you a girlfriend. We need this, that, and the other. And in the original, Willard's mother, played by Elsa Lanchester, funny enough, the Bride of Frankenstein. Um, she's telling him that, oh, he ought to get out more and, he ought to see if he can get a promotion. And she just wants the best for him. Both mothers want the best for him, like any good mother would. But it really is both of these movies to me about the social, the horrors of being a social misfit, a social outcast. And, the rats kind of play second fiddle to that. And they play Willard's salvation into that. And that's why I think both these movies are really good. But I will say, and now we're coming full circle and which one we're going to pick, original or remake. I will say that I do think that while the original is maybe technically the better movie, I'm going to have to lean remake here. I think just maybe, we have found the first remake in the history of remakes that I like slightly more than the original film. And this is like, if you know me, I don't ever put remakes over or reboots over, but I'm gonna have to go with the Willard remake here. So I'm not gonna keep you in suspense. The winner is Willard from 2003. It's fairly close. I think these movies are really close. Like the IMDb scores, I think these are really crazy close. Um, like I said, the original gets a 6.2, the remake gets a 6.1. But I have to say, from a stance of horror, I think this movie is a little bit better of a horror film. I think the original is more of a dramatic thriller, whereas this one is definitely more, horror. I think it's more straight up horror. And I think Crispin Glover's performance is more intense, is better than Bruce Davison's. And to me, that's the big reason why I'm going to pick to watch one of these two. That's maybe why I'd reach for this movie over the original, is really because of Crispin Glover. I think he's that damn good. I like the empathy and the heart that Laura Herring provides the film. I think Glenn Morgan does a really good job behind the director's chair. I think that all around, both movies are fairly good. But I'm gonna have to lean remake here, and I know that that's a big reason why I want to do this, because if I ever did this pretty much anything else, I almost always gonna go the original film. But when I watched both movies just past this past spooky season, I sat down and said, "Wow, like this is fucking close. Like, let me do a show. Let me talk this out. Let's see you know, which one that I like better." And, sure enough, we're going to go original here. I mean, I'm sorry, we're going to go remake here. So the remake, it goes over. I know, crazy. Let's get through some comments here. Let's see. The CG helps, in my opinion, at least at the time. It provided me a visual on what fuck ton of rats would look like. Remake ending, fuck the world though. Okay, so definitely Corey's all aboard on the remake. Poor Scatman dies in it too. Oh, you guys talking about what, The Shining or Deadly Eyes? Okay, Deadly Eyes it was. I made an ungodly number of dead mom jokes courtesy of mom in the remake. Oh no, that's not good. Scatman Crothers. Rats get hit with the bad abbing all over your nice Ivy League suit. Oh yeah, sure. Love when Willard finally unloads on Ben. The rat has no idea what this man is screaming about, but the actions speak louder. Yes, that scene in the remake is so intense, because but you do get the sense that Ben does know. Like, that's how fucking believable that Crispin Glover is. He really looks at this rat like he knows English. Like, it's that sick of a performance. It's very much more over the top, but I don't think it gets too far over the top to the point where it gets ridiculous, like Glenn Morgan's other remake. I would say that this one, it's dialed up to 11, but I think it's not in a bad way at all. I think it's quite good. Best Rat King for Ninja Turtle film. Oh, sure. Hello, everyone. Love this movie, both versions. Outside the Nine, welcome, my friend. Hope all is well. Hey, Eddie, that's awesome. Yeah, no, and please, I'm glad to hear that you like both versions. I do too. That's why I kind of figured this would be a good one to do, because they're close. I like both movies. It's not that I consider one a piece of shit, the other one great. This was, I think, worth doing. And I think it's a question that I think everybody should kind of ask themselves. Now, I've asked people before I went live with this, which one they find better of the two. And actually quite a few people told me the remake. So I was very interested in that. Now, I also got a lot of people telling me that they were not familiar with the original. So if that's the case, I think you should go watch the original and really be fair about it. Sometimes what happens with original versus remake is it's whichever one you see first. Like, I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I seen the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre before the Tobe Hooper version." I'm like, then you're doing yourself a big disservice. Like, you need to watch the Tobe Hooper version. It's miles better than the fucking '03 movie. That's just me. But if you saw that first, maybe you'll think about that. And that's the thing. But to me, in my opinion, this was a good one to tackle. I think it's fairly close. I want it to be fair to both films. And I do like both. I do recommend both. And I think for spooky season, they work. If you want to watch a movie about the horrors of being a social outcast, I think you guys would look no further than either one of these movies. Definitely really highly recommend both of these. If you do not own them, I highly recommend you check out the Shout Factory. I believe put Blu-rays of both of these out. And if you don't want to spend the money, I know the original is streaming for YouTube for free on YouTube. So that's really cool. So yes, this was remake versus original. And somehow, some way, the remake comes out on top. I know, I'm just as surprised as all of you. Let's see. This channel is amazing. Thank you so much, Outside the Night. I appreciate you saying that. And Sean saying, John rules. Dude, thank you. But guys, I appreciate the kind words as always. It's very humbling. And if you think so, if you do think this channel is amazing and you do think I rule, in just 2 nights on our normal recording night, of course, Thursdays live at 8:05. That's when we always do Grande's Graveyard. This was more of an impromptu stream. This Thursday, we're going to be talking all things Candyman because it's the 30th anniversary this coming Sunday, October the 16th, of the original film. So this Thursday, my good buddy Don and I will be discussing all things Candyman, from Candyman the original, Candyman 2 Farewell in the Flesh, Candyman 3 Day of the Dead, and of course Candyman 2021, the reboot from, of course, Nia DaCosta, I believe, is the director's name. So we'll be discussing all things Candyman. So if you are a fan, if you're interested, you can come check us out on that show. That's going to be a lot of fun. Corey saying, stab that like. I hope you do. And then Outside the Night says, love Candyman. As do I. I totally. Everyone in the chat is awesome. Absolutely. We love the chat, man. No doubt about it. Some great fans here in the graveyard. So yeah, if you guys want to check us out Thursday night, please do. Don will be on with me. We'll be talking all things Candyman, Tony Todd, Virginia Madsen, and celebrating the 30th anniversary of the legendary horror figure Candyman. So I'm super excited about that. If you catch the replay of this, comment down below. Let me know which one you like better, the original Willard or the remake of Willard. Let me know why. And, we're going to wrap this up here. So everybody, thank you so much for checking out the show tonight. This was a brief one, an impromptu one, but nevertheless, always a fun one. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. We will catch you this Thursday live at 8:05 for the Candyman retrospective. And we will catch you next time only on the Graveyard. Too sweet, peace, and good night, everybody.